This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here today with Dean Stoyka, winemaker at Stratus down in Niagara-on-the-Lake. A gentleman we haven't actually seen in person for almost 3 years. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Jamie. I'm, loving life here in Niagara. No snow yet. It's been kind of a warm start to the fall.
Oh,
And
well.
actually, we're waiting for ice wine to happen. That's the
Right.
switch over for winemakers here in Niagara that probably not many other winemakers in the world have to worry about. Is you finish your regular harvest and then you have to worry about ice wine. We're probably the only winemakers in the world who hope for -8 degrees.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
some
of
point.
course, of course. Well,
So
we
we're
have
waiting
about
for that.
we have about a foot of snow up here right now, and it looks like there's going to be more this evening. So you have been 13 years of your life at Stratus. Tell us a little bit about how you got your start there, how your role has evolved throughout the years, and the changes that you have seen at Stratus throughout this time period.
Sure. So I started here in 2010,
Wow.
and I was a student at Niagara College in the winemaking program.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Niagara region. I grew up in Niagara Falls, and actually my father was in the wine industry as well since 1978. He worked for what was Bryce Wine back then, which became for Constellation Arterra, and he was there for 42 years. He retired in 2020. So I grew up around wine. For me, wine was just something that was always there as a kid. I didn't really think of it much from a winemaker standpoint. And then I eventually graduated high school. It was a recession and thought, what am I going to do with my life? And I remember my dad saying, if you're not like in school this September, you're going to come work at the winery. And I didn't want to go work for him. So I thought, you know what? Forget that. I'm going to go and study winemaking and become a winemaker. That would be an even better path. So I enrolled at Niagara College in 2009 and started at Niagara. And then I started in the spring of 2010 at Stratus, actually on the retail bar. Suzanne Janke, our state director, hired me in the retail bar, and JL had hired me for harvest. So I started in retail and then went and did that harvest in 2010 as a cellar hand. And I've never left since. Here we are 13 seasons later. And there's been a lot of change throughout the years, but Stratus really kind of piqued my interest. I actually had another job at a winery that I was, I didn't promise, but it was like a handshake agreement that I was going to work at another winery. And this posting came up for Stratus, which I had walked through that winter and thought, wow, that winery was really unique. I got to at least interview there just to see what it's about.
Yeah.
And JL offered me the job for the upcoming harvest, and I had to call that other winery and say, look, I would have loved to work with you, but there's this other place. It's kind of a dream opportunity. And everyone in the class was kind of applying, there was this sort of buzz about Stratus. So I kind of felt really cool that I got the job at the winery. And it was a pretty unique place. I thought that as a guy growing up in Niagara, you always in the wine class, everyone say, if you like won the lottery, where in the world would you open a winery? And you kind of always think like Napa or maybe somewhere in Italy, Burgundy and Bordeaux always jump in there. And sort of as a Niagara native, even somebody who grew up here, my first choice probably back then wouldn't have been, Niagara-on-the-Lake. And then there was this winery where, the owner had a chance to open a winery anywhere in the world. And he chose in 2000 this property right here in Niagara-on-the-Lake and had this vision of this ultra premium winery that could make fantastic wines from a single terroir in Niagara. And that right there was like, wow, what a vision that JL and proprietor David Feldberg had back then to put this winery here and invest in Niagara when not many wineries in 2000 were popping up yet. There was a big flush in around 2005, right when Stratus was built, but in 2000 there wasn't much. So that really intrigued me because I thought, somebody has a belief here in Niagara, and this is my home. I sort of got in the region thinking that there was good job security in working in a winery because you can't pick up a vineyard and move that to South America or to China or anything like that. So there's this great,
very much.
This great job, security that you have working in a vineyard because it's really locked to the area. And I thought that it's a great job for tourism and marketing and manufacturing and farming, and it's all the things all in one. So really intrigued me, the wine industry, and then working in Niagara and staying in Niagara as part of my story became something I became interested in when I started at Stratus.
So how did you end up moving into the vineyard management side of things?
So I became the vineyard manager at the end of 2014,
Right.
and so I was in the cellars and the lab. I was a lab technician for 2 years, and I was a cellar
Oh,
supervisor for a couple of years between 2010 and 2014. And it was JL actually who approached me sort of out of the blue one day and said, "Hey, would you be interested in being the vineyard manager?" And sort of, what intrigued me to work with JL is our very first interview, how much he spoke about wine being made in the vineyard. It was the first time I ever heard that. As a new world winemaking student, there's so much emphasis on the winemaker and the winery and the facility, and Stratus definitely has a fantastic facility. But there's this old world winemaking thing that really it's about the vineyard. And if you go tour at any winery in Europe, the winemaker is usually showing up in a tractor or something coming from the vineyard. Like it's really the winemakers are the vigneron or the vineyard manager at the same time. So when he offered that, I thought this is kind of completing my studies a little bit. I've been in the cellar, I've been in the lab, I did the retail. And he sort of said that, let's take it slow, but you need to complete your knowledge by getting some years of experience in the. And so I did a bunch of years, about 4 years managing the vineyard, which was really, it was the most exciting time in winemaking for me because you really see the interaction in the vine. You start to feel like there's 62,000 vines on the property of Stratus, and you have sort of 62,000 sort of friends or children or something that you're caring for, and you see their interaction in every different season, and when there's rain or when there's drought, when there's sprays going on, whatever you do with the soil, whether you're ripping or tilling, and so you start to form this like kind of relationship with the vines, and you care about what you're doing to the vines because you want to see the reaction you're hoping that you'll see, because you think that's a vine is perfectly in balance when it's growing nice and tall and it's got lots of foliage, but not too much foliage, and the color of the leaves are a perfect shade of green, not too dark, not too light, and the fruit's looking nice and healthy, and you have 2 bunches per shoot. So you become like obsessed with having 62,000 versions of that. And that's what was really, really unique that I thought working at Stratus get a chance. And what's really cool about this project is it was started to really investigate and learn about a single terroir, one region, single terroir, 56-acre vineyard with 16 varieties planted in. How will these 16 varieties interact on the single terroir, which is really, really cool. Thomas Batchelder is another mentor of mine, and his is sort of the opposite approach. It's a different terroir in every area you can imagine, and he's investigating it that way, which is another really cool approach. But I love the idea of Stratus having this one site and seeing everything we can do with the grapes from this one site, and really seeing the evolution of the vineyard now over 13 seasons is really cool to see.
Now, when did you switch from your vineyard manager role back into winemaking? Because it was at the beginning of this year you took over as winemaker, right?
Yeah, so I was the assistant winemaker in 2018, and I did that sort of a kind of a vineyard manager, assistant winemaker role in 2018, so a bit of a both. And we hired a vineyard manager to replace me, who worked with me for about a year, learning things in the vineyard, and sort of learning the way we do it at Chaz, because you can be a vineyard manager from anywhere and come to one particular vineyard, and you still need some time to learn how they do it in that vineyard. Every vineyard is so drastically different, especially how we do things here at Chaz with Tannat and Sangiovese and Tempranillo and Malbec and Syrah varieties you might not typically see in Niagara. So I did that for a year, and then in 2019 I became more full-time assistant winemaker, then overseeing the vineyard. And then JL promoted me to be the winemaker of Stratus in 2022 in January. So that's been going on for about a year now, and it's been great to be under the mentorship of somebody who's so brilliant like JL. And I remember thinking back 2010 when I did my first harvest at Stratus, sort of thinking at the time, as any young person doesn't really know what they're getting into at that point. I could be a winemaker. I thought I could be a winemaker right now. I'm graduated. I did a harvest. I see how wine's made. I'm ready to be a winemaker right now. And I remember JL sort of saying to me, "Oh, take it slow. You're gonna learn. You're gonna learn a lot, but we're not gonna get too crazy." And he was really good at taking a young person who has a lot of energy and wants to do everything and master everything and be everything all at once, and slowing that progression down to saying, if you do all that, you're probably going to fail. You're going to take on way too much. You're going to fail. So let's do this one step at a time. And when you master this tool, you you get another tool to master, and when you master that tool, you can get another tool until your toolbox is starting to fill up, and then you're ready to lead the tool shop, right? And that wasn't my vision, I have to say. That was really JL's vision of understanding that winemaking is takes a lot of dedication, takes a lot of time and effort, and you can't learn it overnight. And you have to be very humble in what you do in winemaking. And JL is really good at that. He's a very, very smart person. He's very humble. He's not, trying to boast to anyone about his winemaking. He's very comfortable in his own shoes about what he does. And that was a great opportunity for me to learn from someone like that, because I'd never had someone like that in my life that really had this vision for me that I didn't even know what I was getting into yet, right?
Now, JL is still integral to the winemaking component at Stratus, right? You work very, very closely with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk every day. Even if he's not at the winery, we're always talking, and we do still all the tastings together. There's no wines that he's not tasting or doesn't get input on. Stratus is a really innovative and dynamic company, which is great, but also poses amazing things, but also challenges too for the winemaker.
Yeah.
And by dynamic, I mean that they give us a lot of freedom to really make what we think we can make and do what we want to do, with reason, obviously. So I have an opportunity to have a lot of innovative ideas and do a lot of cool new things, or things that we've done in the past, or bring them back. And JL is always involved in that decision making, and to say, last year we made a Tempranillo Rosado, for instance. It was a pretty rainy fall. Tempranillo wasn't probably going to hang long enough to make really, really fantastic, high quality red wine Tempranillo. And so I said, hey, let's try this. We should do a Tempranillo Rosado. And JL got the input to say, oh yeah, okay, I think that could work, and we'll put it in barrel and all that. So there's a lot of that dynamic decision making that we can do together. We do a lot. JL is a very, very organized person. He's a great planner. He's very consistent. And then we also have that, and then we get the other side of things where we're dynamic enough that we can change on the fly. And JL is really good. He knows that no plan is always set in concrete. Every plan changes. All the years of Niagara Vineyard experience, he's gotten really good at that. So it's really great to be dynamic like that and say, hey, let's try this wine, or let's do this. At the last minute before you lose the opportunity, we're able to change course and make something really cool and unique. And that's really special, I think, about JL and working at Stratus.
Now, in these 13 years, what are the biggest changes that you've seen? Because you're working with 16 varieties. And I know that Stratus experimented with each and every one of those varieties and bottled all of them individually, actually, at some point in the history. What kind of changes really stick out in your mind, particularly perhaps when it comes to varieties and how those are utilized within the Stratus wines?
Yeah. Well, we brought a label out, a big change that I saw a couple of years ago. We brought a label called Trials to market probably about 4 years ago. It's kind of an innovation or idea incubator. It's a way for us to come out with wines and concepts that maybe won't fit under the black label just yet, because we want to try them out, see what the feedback is. So that was a big change for us to add this. We were doing, as you're talking about, a lot of research and development in varieties and winemaking. There's so many little small R&D trials that we're constantly doing every single year in the vineyard and in the winery. And Suzanne Jenke actually sort of, had tasted some of these wines. I'd always see her and be like, hey, try this funky little trial that we're doing. And she was like, wow, we should bottle these wines, and sell these wines rather than always blending them away. And that's how we landed on this wine called Trials, where we could actually sell our experiments and get feedback, not just from the winemakers, but from customers. And that's allowed us to do different things with varieties, like make a Tempranillo Rosado. We started doing a field blend. So that was a big change. We were keeping these varieties all separate for years and years when I started here in 2010. And now we blend all that together many different times in our winemaking process. We pick it all together. We ferment it all together rather than all single fermentations.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of change like that to sort of, we were always thinking outside the box, and then we even expanded further to say, this is just outside the box, but this is a whole other idea. What will happen if we take all 16 varieties in our vineyard and ferment every single one of those varieties together, make a wine with 16 varieties in it? What would come out of that, right? And that's some sort of concepts and ideas that I'm working on right now.
I have to ask you, how does it come together when you do a co-ferment with 16 varieties like that?
Well, you'll see it'll be coming out pretty soon. You'll get a preview of that this summer. But it makes a very interesting wine. It makes a wine that you wouldn't, as I guess you could probably theorize, you wouldn't taste it and say this is a Cab Franc or this is a Chardonnay or this is, you're not tasting the varietal part in there. Well, you are tasting a really complex wine with different aromatics and different flavors that you might not find otherwise. You know, the co-ferment together. You have all these compounds of different varieties co-fermenting together, so you get a really unique mouthfeel, and
I can only imagine. Yes. Yeah. What else is exciting you with regards to releases? What's in the hopper right now, or what's on the shelves in retail that's really exciting you?
So I would say there's a couple things. 2020 wines are going to be released, not just yet, but they're coming out, let's say in the next year or so. And that's our 20th vintage at Stratus. And so there's some really fun and unique things. We really did things, major changes to our branding and things like that in 2020 for the 2020 vintage. So that'll be some cool, unique stuff that you're seeing. Also some change to packaging. You know, as we're a sustainably minded company, we're always looking to dematerialize and go to, you know, lighter glass, you know, less material on our bottle and things like that, more recycled material and whatnot. So that's some pretty fun and unique changes. And then thirdly, I'd say as harvest is then finishing right now and we're starting to put wine in barrel, that's sort of the winemaker term. We're going to barrel, but I would say for us now, it's not even a term anymore because so much of our wine is going into clay amphoras.
Yes.
So we're going to release some wines that are made with clay amphoras solely, and also some blends that are made with clay amphora. And so that's been a major change for me at Stratus throughout the years. Is when I started here in 2010, we had a lot of wines that were probably 50-40% new oak. Sometimes we'd go all the way up to 70% new oak. Yeah. And now our wines are down to 5%, 10% new oak, maybe 20% at the most. And then a proportion of clay amphora wine is going in them as well. And I love making wine with amphora. We've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now. And I have different shapes, different vessels. What's really unique about clay is the temperature that they bake the clay at. And the warmer or hotter that you bake the temperature at, let's say as you're approaching 1300 degrees Celsius, you're starting to get closer to like a ceramic, and then hotter than that's even getting to porcelain, which you can imagine if you know the compound or what a mixture of porcelain is like. It's very inert, doesn't let oxygen. It's almost getting to the point of like glass, where it's like a glass bottle. Whereas if they bake it a little bit less, you know, to 1000 degrees, you're much more in like a clay amphora pot, and you let more oxygen.
Yeah, much more porous.
Way more porosity. So I purchased these clay amphoras with different porosities. I have right now 4 different amphoras ranging in temperature from 950 degrees to 1300 degrees Celsius. So there's different porosities, different materials too. You can't bake all the same materials at different temperatures. So as you go to a more porous vessel, you get to more, let's say, clay, traditional Italian style. Whereas if you're going hotter, you might get more sandstone or more silica and things like that in the material to be able to bake hotter. So it's really fun in experimenting with these different vessels to see what they offer to our wines. And again, it's another tool in the toolbox of complexity. Every winemaker making Stratus style wines really wants more tools for complexity. How can I add more flavors, more, you know, different structure, different mouthfeel to the wines? And then you know, learning from someone like Jael, who is really a master of blending. It's been 13 years in the making to, you know, coming up with new ideas for blends as well. It's not just about the varieties anymore. It's about how we vinify them in the cellars and how we focus on, you know, what's cool about Niagara, and especially what we're doing here at Stratus. We really focus on wines, obviously with the complexity component, but with structure and intensity and flavor intensity. But at the same time, the Niagara region is known for elegance. We're a cool climate winemaking region. So I feel like a lot of what we're doing is trying to evolve that elegance in our cellars and nurture the elegance of the wines coming from our vineyard. And clay goes a long way in being able to do that and being able to nurture this sort of vibrancy, the freshness, the acidity in the wines. And it's definitely a fun learning experience.
Superb. Well, Dean, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today and giving us an insight into your 13 years at Stratus and what you've been doing more recently there. Any special gastronomic or wine plans for the holidays?
That's a great question. I did a lot of traveling this summer.
Right.
You know, when talking about the pandemic, revenge travelers, I never thought I'd be that person, but I kind of was. I didn't mean to be, but I was. I did a lot of traveling throughout Europe, and I was in Bordeaux. I went to Spain. I did a lot of traveling in Portugal and the Azores, learning a lot about wine. So mostly for the holidays, it's tasting a lot of the wines we've been purchasing all in the travels and
yes,
doing some cooking as well through that. My girlfriend owns her own seafood marketing company. And
oh, superb.
so we do a lot of seafood, and we actually had dinner on Friday at a restaurant called Affinity Fish. I don't know if you heard of them in Toronto
Yes,
yet.
I have.
They
Yes.
opened in the summertime. And they make sushi grade fish with all lake fish from Lake Huron and Lake Ontario and some farm selections, you know, pickerel and smallmouth bass in sushi, which I never even thought about that being. It was so innovative and unique. So I think we'll stick to more of that kind of stuff, trying some unique selections of food that are becoming more innovative in Ontario right now for sure. The food scene is really, really exciting.
Excellent. Well, as I said, Dean, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution. Have a great holiday season, and hopefully I'll see you down at Stratus at some point in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy.
Excellent. Take care. Bye for now, sir.